Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm sorry I was not able to put out a video because I wasn't feeling well. This video will be the continuation of my last video, which talks about if women prefer bad guys to good guys. As usual, I'm going to start this video with a disclaimer. People who attacked me on Reddit saying that I know the age of this person who makes videos like, you know, if good girls like bad guys and bad guys like good girls, you attacking my age is not going to prove a point. Please watch the fucking video first and then you can critique me all you want. In this channel, constructive criticism is always welcome as opposed to personal attacks. The other thing I wanted to say was that while researching for this particular video, I came across a lot of different research papers which again talked about women preferring bad guys to good guys. They were just named differently. So in those research papers, I think one of those research papers talked about cads, who are the bad guys, and dads, who are the good guys. The other one talked about proper heroes and dark heroes. Proper heroes are obviously the nice guys, and dark heroes are the bad guys. And those papers also kind of concluded the fact that women do prefer guys with bad guys for a short-term fling as opposed to nice guys. But again, in the end, women really prefer nice guys that, you know, that fulfilled or that crossed a certain threshold of bad guys. The last video talked about the, you know, evolutionary behavior of women and what kinds of men will, you know, women want when it comes to their evolutionary instinct. But I personally think that your psychology plays even a better role when it comes to women or men deciding their future partners. It was brought to my attention that I dispelled a lot of black and white kind of ideas in my last video, and I will try to dispel those black and white ideas that I propagated in my previous video. So first of all, I came across this thing called attachment theory. I think this was proposed by Bowlby. I could be wrong here. I forgot. But essentially in psychology, there are 4 types of attachment styles: secure, dismissive avoidant or insecure avoidant, fearful avoidant, and anxious preoccupied. So let's talk about the first one. So people with secure attachment styles are people who grow up in very you know, good households and have very healthy childhoods growing up, and this is why they don't have any problems getting close with their partners or having some sort of emotional intimacy with their partners. They're very easygoing with everything, and that's essentially it. And I don't really think you'll find a lot of secure attachment type kind of people, but I watched a certain video where I think I'm not so sure if that person had a psychology degree, but he essentially said that Captain America in the Marvel movies has a secure attachment style. So those kinds of people are fine being alone, are comfortable being alone, and are also comfortable being with a partner. The second one is avoidant. Which avoidant? Dismissive avoidant. So the perfect example of dismissive avoidant is Iron Man or Tony Stark from the Marvel movie franchise. And how he is exactly is Tony Stark is very uncomfortable when it comes to his feelings. And whenever there is a very serious situation going on, he usually tries to minimize the seriousness of the situation by making jokes. He does not like to get close with anybody, and he's very uncomfortable with emotions. So what happens with these kinds of people is that in their childhood, parents or caregivers are largely emotionally unavailable or unresponsive most of the time. So this is why these kinds of people, they place very high value on independence and autonomy and develop techniques to reduce feelings of being overwhelmed and defend themselves from perceived from their perceived threat to their independence. So they just don't lean onto their partners. They're extremely independent, and they just don't like expressing their emotions with their significant other. The third one is fearful avoidant. I think this is a little bit more sad, I think. So this fearful avoidant is also called come here, go away. So the people with this kind of like attachment style are very uncomfortable when people get too close, but are also not comfortable with distance. So anytime that person realizes that this person is being very close to me, I think that person would try and sabotage it, or say like, you know, no, we're being too close. But when that person starts experiencing distance, that is also not very good for the person with fearful avoidant attachment style. So when it comes to their childhood, these are the children that go through physical abuse are the ones that are fearful avoidant. They're alone but uncomfortable with both intimacy and distance. They also struggle trusting their partner. So the final one is anxious preoccupied. So this is the kind of attachment style that is kind of manifested by their parents being very bipolar. I'm not trying to minimize the meaning of that meaning of that word. Bipolar disorder is a mental illness, but what I mean to say is like I want to make you understand what it means. So at sometimes the parents are very, very warm and very welcoming, and you know, very accepting of the child's emotions, but at some points the parents are very cold and they don't really care. So because of this, they are very confused, and what happens with them is they desire a lot of closeness from their relationships, and they can also be clingy, demanding, obsessive, and they overanalyze their relationships. They also form a fantasy bond, which basically means that they have this idealized, very flowery kind of view of the relationship, very idealized way of looking at their partner. It's either be saved or get saved kind of mentality when it comes to anxious preoccupied. And unfortunately, people with the attachment style anxious preoccupied also mistake unhealthy relationships for passion and they have very low self-esteem. So I think the perfect example of this, I can't give you a certain example for the third type, which is fearful avoidant, but for anxious preoccupied, I think the perfect example would be Tessa from the movie After, because she also, you know, mistakes the abusive relationship that she has with Harden for passion. And I think she does have low self-esteem, although I can't remember if it was really shown, but just an example to make you understand. So when I started thinking about researching further for this topic, the first thing that came into my mind, especially when it comes to women's preferences for men, the first thing that came into my mind was the absence or presence of fathers. This particular thing came into my mind because of the fact that I studied in China for 5 years, and I met a lot of girls, a lot of women who were studying in the same university that I studied in, and they were from broken homes, and they grew up without a father, or they did not have a proper father figure in their lives. And what I noticed was a certain kind of pattern. So I think there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 women that I knew. Out of these 5 women, I think only 2 women were okay, like were fine, I guess, but maybe they didn't share the details of the relationships that they had. But the thing is, one woman, her parents divorced when she was 15. So one of my friends, I would say, right? So her parents divorced when she was 15. So I don't think she counts. So what happened was, the pattern that I realized was all of these women were either in abusive relationships, and they could not identify if the abuse was happening. One of very, very close friends that I have, she also made various mistakes when it comes to, you know, choosing partners, and she was in a couple of very abusive relationships. Verbally abused, sexually abused, physically abused, all sorts of abuse, mental abuse, all sorts of abuse that you can think of. So I started researching in this, what happens if women have fathers missing in their lives, or men have fathers missing in their lives. So there was this particular study called Paternal Disengagement and Women's Sexuality, and this study talked about how paternal disengagement can lead to an activation of sexual thoughts in women. I think this talked about like early activation of sexual thoughts. They expressed more permissive sexual attitudes. They increased the number of men with whom women desire to have sex with. So basically more promiscuous than the other women that than their than the counterparts who grew up with their fathers. And finally increased women's negativity towards condom use, which can lead to pregnancy. So the other thing was that this paper also talked about men who experienced father's absence favored a sexually promiscuous mating strategy. They were misogynistic and reluctant to engage in parental investment. And finally, were more violent, aggressive, rebellious, high in risk-taking, and at high risk of incarceration. However, so men who grew up in father-present households were more likely to delay sexual experience, have positive attitudes towards and develop stable pair bonds with women, have good relations with male peers, and accept authority. So basically the conclusion of this is men who grew up with fathers had lower risk of incarceration. They were more likely to delay sexual experience. They had positive attitude towards women. They developed stable bonds with women. They have good relations with male peers, and they accept authority. But men growing up without fathers had they were more promiscuous. They were more misogynistic. They were reluctant to engage in parental investment. So they themselves did not want to be fathers. They were more violent, aggressive, rebellious, high in risk-taking, and at high risk of incarceration. I'm really sorry, like I'm not making eye contact right now because my laptop is right here and I have to read something. Some things are, a lot of jargon, so I can't memorize. I wasn't able to memorize everything. So there's this particular researcher, Bowlby. I think he's the same man who proposed these attachment styles, and he had argued that children who felt loved and welcomed by their parents, they experience secure attachment. However, those who were not loved and they had unwelcome experiences had some forms of insecure attachment. So all three: dismissive avoidant, fearful avoidant, and anxious preoccupied. So children who grew up in a very good household were more likely to have a secure attachment style. However, children who grew up in abusive or had unwelcome experiences in their household were more likely to have the insecure attachment styles. Bowlby, the same researcher, he also argued that women who grew up in father-absent households, they show earlier sexual activity. I said that before. As well as a lack of interest or ability to form and or maintain long-term monogamous relationships. Also, he also argued that women who had a very good relationship with their fathers reached menstruation later than those with an emotionally distant or absent fathers. After talking about all of this, I think we have to talk about some of the disturbing aspects. I'm sure you all are aware that, sexual molestation is very much rampant in the third world countries, and even in second world countries. I've heard some very terrible stories about like women being sexually molested by someone very, very close. So I will be talking about women's preferences pertaining to if they were sexually molested at a young age, and especially by someone close. women who have been sexually molested by someone close have difficulties with trust. They have a fear of intimacy. They have a fear of being different or weird. They have difficulty establishing interpersonal boundaries. They have passive behaviors, and basically saying that they're shy. And I can attest to this because one of the friends that I talked about, she told me that she was very, very shy growing up, and they are more likely to get involved in abusive relationships. And I can again attest to this one because one of my friends, she grew up without a father, and she had experiences with horrible abusive relationships. There was another study that concluded that as the severity, so as the abuse increased, or as the seriousness of the abuse increased, people were not able to adjust to intimate relationships. Like, they were less likely to adjust to intimate relationships. If sexual abuse is often initiated by someone the child loves and trusts, basically a family member or a relative, it will break trust and may result in the child believing that people they love will hurt them, which will lead them to a cycle of being in abusive relationships, because the only thing that they know about relationships is abuse is a part of the relationship. So many of the sexual abuse survivors experience sexual difficulties. So the long-term effects of the abuse that the survivor experiences, they are more likely to experience depression and dissociative patterns, and it even affects the survivor's sexual functioning. So Maltz, the study done by Maltz, it gives a list of the top 10 sexual symptoms that often result from experiences of sexual abuse. So avoiding, fearing, or lack of interest in sex, approaching sex as an obligation, experiencing negative feelings such as anger, disgust, or guilt with touch, having difficulty becoming aroused or feeling sensation, feeling emotionally distant or not present during sex, experiencing intrusive or disturbing sexual thoughts and images, engaging in compulsive or inappropriate sexual behaviors, experiencing difficulty establishing or maintaining an intimate relationship, experiencing vaginal pain or orgasmic difficulties, and experiencing erectile, ejaculatory, or orgasmic difficulties. So these are all the ramifications of sexual abuse that women and men have to go through. I think there was a study done on the prevalence and predictors of sexual dysfunction in the United States, and it revealed that victims of sexual abuse, male victims of sexual abuse and female victims of sexual abuse, experience sexual problems more than the general population. Male victims of childhood sexual abuse are more likely to experience erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, and low sexual desire, and they found that women were more likely to have arousal disorders. Just reading these kind of made me very, very sad. It's very difficult to read about these kinds of things. So the reason why I decided to do this video is because people were accusing me of propagating very black and white ideas. I think I made a mistake while making my last video. This video was made to make people aware of how men and women choose their partners and how their psychology plays a major role in it. Like I said, I have met different kinds of people with different backgrounds and a lot of things, and I can attest to the fact that the things that I read here, they're very much, they hit home, and I've met all different kinds of people who have experienced all sorts of abuse from their partners, and all of them had some sort of very negative experiences with sex in a very, very young age. So saying this much, please, I hope this video wasn't too dark. I don't mean it to be dark. My final words is that if you have a partner who is not very willing to engage in sexual activities, talk to your partner, whether it be male or female, and try to bring her or him to their comfort zone so that they can feel more comfortable, because these kinds of abuse victims, they take a long time to process what they've gone through, and it's a forever battle that those kinds of people are always battling with, you know, the ramifications that they have to face because of what happened to them in their childhoods. Again, I would like to say that, you know, bad guy, good guy, it doesn't matter. You just have to be a good person. You know, a girl or a guy, it doesn't matter. Just be a good person and everything will follow suit. Thank you so much for watching this video. Again, I'm really sorry I put out the video really late. I will put out another video, I guess, next week, and that video might cause a lot of problems as well as usual. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you next week. 再见.